Hey again. I know I'm driving everybody crazy with my videos, but it's been a long adventure and I keep changing because I'm finding out more and more information. I went on this quest to find out what's really going on in the church, and it's disgusting how much fear there is out in the field, and I can't count how many people that I have spoken to with all different viewpoints. Some of them are integral against the tech, even though they're like OT7, OT8. How can you go that much and not have any wins? Okay, but and then the big thing for me was finding out that the IRS owns the copyrights in the church since 1982. And as soon as I found that out, it just totally makes sense. And when I tell other people that have been gone for like years, they go, "Oh my God!" And it's like, I got it, and that's what happened. And you know, KSW1 having the right tech. So per consumer law, which I trained in, there's seven definitions of fraud, and basically it fits all the definitions of what they're delivering now. It's not Hubbard's tech. I talked to Ray Roybals a couple nights ago, and wow, I know I'm on the right path. And it's totally understandable that there's a big argument in the field about the different tech, because it depends on when you trained, you see. For instance, one man was telling me as soon as his wife was not doing well in the grades, and then he pulled out the old lists, and then she did great. You know, so, you know, and even Hubbard says, you know, if you don't deliver the tech, you're going to end up with enemies. You know, you're going to end up with an empty org. People are not going to come back for service. And isn't that exactly what's happening? So, as far as all this fear in the field, it's absolutely ridiculous. No church in America is allowed to investigate you, call up your friends, your business partners, whatever, to get them to disconnect from you, which has happened to many. That is completely illegal. It's slander. And if you resign in writing, they can't do that because now you're not in the group anymore, so you don't follow the mores of the group. Like the disconnection, which was actually canceled in 1968, and that's a long time ago. And it's really hard when you first come out because you feel lost a little bit. Yeah, I feel like a refugee from war. Because, you know, all those 30 years, because of my background in studying Constitution and Bill of Rights and Ayn Rand and the consumer law, which, interesting enough, in school, you don't learn all that, the Constitution and all that. So if you look at this group the way it's been, and if you look at the history of education, you kind of understand why these people on staff, like, harass you and think they have the right to impinge in your life and dictate, you know, what you're supposed to do, how you're supposed to think, nail you for free speech. Like if you notice the tech is out, especially if you trained in the early days and you report it and you end up kicked out, obviously someone's taken over the management, which is something I've noticed. But, you know, the average person nowadays, you don't know your rights. And if you did, you wouldn't have this fear, okay? They're not allowed to bother me. And I know they're probably going to call up friends and family and blah, blah, blah. You know, that's what I got to say. So, you want to be like that? You know, it's funny, the church, the first thing they do is use the laws to protect themselves. Okay, think about it. So, I'm going to put lots of links on my webpage to help you out and just get your footing regarding your hat as an American citizen. Because if that hat was on real strong, you would have been like me, fighting all this garbage that goes on in the church, you know, violating civil rights and so on, you know, holding on to staff members, all this kind of stuff. That violates employment laws. And so you'll get your footing on that. And I think, you know, if you just step outside this whole thing that happened to you in the group, because I know I was affected too, even though I know this information, even though I train in mass media and I know how the fear techniques are used on the masses, like putting terrorism in your face constantly with a repeater technique. That's a psychological technique. And what that does is you willingly give up your rights, okay? with global warming. It's scaring the death out of everybody. You give up your rights according to Agenda 21, Sustainable Development. Look that up online. It's a UN program, and it will dictate every aspect of your life. And we don't need a church acting like this, okay? So as soon as I found out the IRS owns the church, I went click, because I know so much about politics, because I understand. But, so I'm going to leave some links, and I hope that helps you out. I wish I quit a long time ago. I didn't know there was Freezone. I didn't know there were independent Scientologists. I never looked at Intago sites. And there's a lot to sift through. Oh, wow. Lots of false data, lots of true data. So I'm going to carefully make sure, check my data before I put it on my little webpage to help you out. And like the information that the IRS owns the church, the website owner went to the Freedom of Information Act and got all the information. And they tried to shut his site down. So I am definitely happy that I'm out now, you know. And if I had gotten out sooner, I wouldn't have lost my daughter. See, I violated my own integrity. Even with my training, seeing what's going on in the group, and I better get my kids out. But I needed to study tech schools, you see. And because, you know, my uncle's a special education psychologist, and he quit after 12 years because they were forcing him to label the children because they get more tax money for every child that is labeled. And this happened before Bush put in the law that they can't do that anymore. However, he also put in teen screen, you know, because his daddy is on the board of directors for Eli Lilly. In fact, Grandpa Bush got nailed in 1943 because he was financially supporting the Nazis. I mean, come on. And then Bush Sr. was in the CIA, and then, you know, we end up with these guys for president. So if you're looking at the Patriot Act and all that, you'll see what's going on. But we don't need this in the church. We don't need this fear tactic. You know, and that's why I started making these videos, so you can see my face. I'm not part of OSA, and I'm not going back. I know too much now. And don't bother me, OSA, okay? Because you know what? You guys need to understand you're not delivering the real tech. And if you really want to do something right, then KSW won. And get that crazy lunatic, Mr. DM, out. Because he's obviously psychotic. So find out. You know, if this church is throwing out people that are pointing out the outpoints of the tech and declaring them as an SP. And the people that are leaving the church are the most uptone, free-thinking people. And oddly enough, have some basic education. Some real education, probably because they read on their own, because they didn't learn it from the public schools. Public schools right now are teaching people to be, you know, conformist, not individualist. No free thinking. They're teaching them how to be socialist globalist citizens, especially nowadays. So, fortunately, I did a lot of my own outside studying. So I could always stay 10 feet back and watch this group. And yet I wanted to train, but I always knew something was wrong. And now I just had that validated. Thank you, Ray Royables, and lots of other people out there that are still doing the tech, finding out for themselves that they were doing the wrong tech and adjusting that, and you know, and they're continuing their bridge. And Mr. Hubbard would be proud. Thank you.